bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.
Welcome into Game Week on SiriusXM, where every single week we take a deep dive into the USL Super League, chatting with coaches and players and important people around the league, and bring you all the information you need to know as we head into the playoffs this weekend. Joined as always by Marion Crowder. I'm Anna Witte. Well, this week is a big one because the playoffs are officially here. We have the top 4 teams in the league. Plus, we will discuss the 2024-2025 Golden Award winners and set you up for the games this weekend. And we are joined by League President Amanda Vandervort. Marion, how you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. I am doing well. What a decision day it was. I stayed up watching both, had so many screens going. It was absolutely fabulous. How are you? How was your weekend?
I'm good. What a crazy weekend. I agree with you. We had 3 games. One of the games, actually, Lexington and DC. I wasn't expecting 6-goal game, but here we are.
Me neither. I in my head, I was just like, you guys could have done this sooner.
Yeah, right. It's a little too late for all this, but hey, they've got 2.5 months until we see them
Absolutely.
in their next regular season. All right, let's dive into the standings because it's Carolina who claimed that #1 spot a few weeks ago. Tampa Bay clinched it last week. Then we have Dallas in 3rd, Fort Lauderdale in 4th. But before we dive into previewing these games this upcoming weekend, let's dive into the Golden Award winners. Golden Boot will go to Dallas's Allie Thornton. She had 13 goals in 27 appearances, first in the Super League to reach double digits in goals this season, and she also had 3 assists on the season. The Golden Glove was given to Carolina's Megan McClellan. She had a goal against average of .97 through 18 games and a 70.2% save percentage. And she finished the season with 41 saves and 6 clean sheets. And then we rounded up with the Golden Playmaker, which is the most assists on the season. Carolina's Jill Aguilera had 7 assists. She had 2 goals to contribute to 9 of Carolina's league high 45 goals on the season. So 2 Carolina players take home an award, and Dallas's Allie Thornton takes home the Golden Boot. What did you see out of these 3 players so far this season? Because all 3 will be in the playoffs this upcoming weekend.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, Allie, we knew at the beginning really of the fall season that she was going to be one that was in contention. It was just a matter of if she could keep the fast start that she had. And watching her kind of level out across the season actually is one of the things that I thought was most impressive. And I mean that in the best way, right? When I think about players that get in the Golden Boot races because they've scored 1 hat trick and then we don't hear from them, right? We don't see any more of their contributions. Allie was consistently there. And even when the games that she wasn't on the score sheet, what I loved is her willingness to evolve. And you could tell that as Dallas Trinity was able to progress through the season, her understanding of not only the players around her, but kind of what she brought, how she had been scouted. And because of that understanding, I think that she opened up a lot of doors for teammates. And so I am really, really happy to see her, get kind of this individual accolade. We've had her on the show before. We know that she is very much a team first kind of gal. So to see this award go to such a deserving person, absolutely love it. You mentioned Megan McClellan. I actually wasn't planning on talking about Megan, but when you said 18 games, right? And then you think about Leshnick Murphy coming in for Carolina and taking over that starting role. I want to give the same kind of kudos that I gave to Allie to Megan, because just because your role has changed doesn't mean you're any less important. And Philip Poole would be the first one to tell you that this was a whole squad effort, what they've been able to achieve. And so for Megan McClellan to kind of have this leadership, this different role, this ability to swap in and out of the first role to being now in a supporting role, I think you have to also give her credit in that facet.
Absolutely. That was one thing I wanted to touch on with Megan, just the fact that she was able to really take Carolina to a place that was above and beyond everybody else in the league at the beginning of the season. I mean, Carolina started the season in an 11-game unbeaten streak. And a lot of that is because of what McClellan has done. And the fact that who went out and got, a competition for McClellan in goal and Leshnick Murphy to come in and finish out the season for them there. I think that just shows you overall Carolina's ability to just stay at that number one spot. And even though there's bouts of the season where they find themselves slipping off at times, I think what we've seen out of the goalkeeper unit there has led to a lot of their success defensively. And then
Yeah,
we get
well
the
said.
gold.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, and then the golden boot playmaker is Jill Aguilera, who started the season in more of an attacking role, was asked to come into a more defensive role as the season progressed. What's impressed you a lot of Aguilera? I also think too, like she created the most chances so far this season and ended out with Ubugagu, who got the most at the very end. But Aguilera was right there, I think, towards the entire spring.
Yeah, to be honest, I care less about the assist garnering and more to the stat that you just said because assists, right? You have to rely on another person to do their role, but chances created are kind of that sole individual responsibility. And to me, that's exactly what I was going to say stood out the most about Jill. Love that she had teammates that can finish around her. Don't get me wrong, but if you just want to isolate her as a player, look at the chances that she created, the quality of chances that she created. And we have a theme with all of our winners, right? This kind of selflessness that they have shown. We talked about Allie Thornton, her ability to open up space for her teammates. We talked about Megan McClellan, her ability to swap roles and be what the team needs her in that moment. And now we talk about Jill Aguilera, as you just mentioned, too, was playing in a different position to start this season, comes back because that's what the team needs and just hits the ground running. And I think that ultimately both Megan and Jill encompass what this Carolina Ascent squad is about, right? This whole idea that we will play the role of what the team needs and we will do it with such a positive attitude. And that to me is not what's only stood out about Jill, but all the winners that you just mentioned.
And Carolina set the standard in a lot of ways of like how you win the Super League, right? It's not just about, individual fall and spring and obviously individual performances, but it's about staying together as a group, forming really good relationships that allow that chemistry to evolve from season to season, the spring and the fall. And also just having a good group of players who push each other to want that starting 11 because no one earned that starting 11 throughout the season. So congratulations to Allie Thornton, Megan McClellan, and Jill Aguilera. There are still a few more awards: the Super League's Player of the Year, Young Player of the Year, Coach of the Year, Defender of the Year, Goalkeeper of the Year, and the USL Super League All League teams will be announced later this month, and we will get to all of that when it comes out. But we've got still plenty left to chat about here on Game Week. We've got a preview of the upcoming weekend, and President Amanda Vandervort joins the show. This is Game Week on Sirius XM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome back to Game Week on Sirius XM. Well, we've got two games this upcoming weekend. Tampa Bay will host Dallas Saturday at 7:30 on Peacock, and Carolina will host Fort Lauderdale Sunday at 7 o'clock on Peacock. How did we get here? Well, Dallas beat Carolina this past weekend 2-1, and Fort Lauderdale tied Spokane 1-1 to knock Spokane out of that playoff spot. Before we dive into these games, Spokane was a team who fought till the very end. Their spring was a performance that was at the top of the table in terms of what we saw them do and evolve from the fall. What impressed you the most of Spokane this season?
Let's give credit to Spokane and really put the reality out there. If Spokane doesn't perform the way that we saw them in the spring season, we don't have the hype as viewers, as audiences, as media who cover this league. We have nowhere near the hype of what decision day was. So let's all just take a moment to say that Spokane kind of put the excitement of the spring season on their back and carried us the whole entire way. Obviously, with the fall of Brooklyn and some other shuffling around,
Sure.
it did add to the elements, but Spokane doesn't come out and do what they did. A team who was, if I'm not mistaken, Anna, one of the top or one of the bottom two teams in the league going into the break, literally took us until the final day to decide if they were going to have a playoff fate or not. What impressed me the most about Spokane was the consistency with which they executed the spring season. If you remember, several shows ago, you and I did kind of this stock up, stock down. Are we going to buy? Are we going to sell? Are we going to hold? And I wasn't quite convinced with Spokane just because it was a really long spring season. And for them to be able to do that week in, week out, that was going to take a lot, right? And I said that on the show. And for
Yeah.
them to truly have the mentality, it's one thing for teams and coaches to say, well, we're just looking ahead to the next game, that whole cliche mentality. It's one thing to say that. It's another thing to go out and do what Spokane did, because that is that mentality on display. Truly, what's in front of us? What do we need to do to succeed with what's in front of us? Let's execute, let's reset, let's do it again. And the simplicity of that mentality, while simple, yes, very, very difficult to execute throughout entire season. And Spokane, that for me is what I commend you on.
Congratulations to Spokane on what was an incredible spring. They actually tied in points against Fort Lauderdale, 42 points, but Fort Lauderdale won the head-to-head, so they go on and make it to the playoffs. Tampa Bay will host Dallas this weekend on Saturday. Tampa Bay went undefeated in their last 4 matches so far. They have this chaotic, constant chaos duo or trio up top in Flint, Flew, Nacello, and a forward in Parker Goins off the bench, who really has been a spark plug for them with 2 goals on the season. This attack comes from everywhere, and it's really hard to predict.
It is. When you were saying like Flint flu, I was like Flint flu phlegm. Like we need another
Yeah,
F to like make make that
Nacello,
acronym
let's
work.
change the name.
Absolutely. So no, you're totally correct. And we talked a lot about the players who won the awards, and rightfully so. But make no mistake that Tampa Bay had several players in several categories that were right on the cusp, right? So as a team, and truly probably as a starting 11, they to me have the least amount of gaps in terms of what they put on the field each and every game. I said it to start this spring season, back to what we just talked about with Spokane and that episode of buy, sell, hold. I was absolutely buying Tampa Bay because they are dogs. I mean, they go out there and they compete. It may not always be the prettiest performance, but that is a group of 11 players plus some key substitutions who are going to go out there until the end of the game and make you earn what you get against them. And so for me, against this Dallas side, I think that it's going to be a very physical matchup because of that mentality. And I think that they're going to try to make this a very, very fast game. I do think that Dallas has some fast players. I think all encompassing, Tampa Bay could really make it problematic for them in terms of the pace. But because I know that you want to touch on Dallas as well, so I'll just transition to Dallas, is that they have likely, while Tampa Bay has probably put out the most consistent starting 11 outside of Carolina, Dallas has likely always been the deepest rotation. And I mean rotation in terms of quality players across the league. You just look at the individual name and quality, 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 right? They haven't always gotten it right when they've been on the field together. And that being said, I do think that they're a different team with Hannah Davison on the pitch. We saw just how different they were when she re-entered into this game where they won against Carolina, something that really not many people thought that they could do. And so I think that this game is likely won in the midfield, Anna, and potentially it even becomes a battle of set piece execution.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Ubagagu had a fantastic game against Carolina
She's
last
so
week, an
good. She's
assist and
so
a
good.
goal. She is so good. And I felt like at times they were getting stuck in their attack and there wasn't this flow,
Yep.
but using her in the wide areas allowed this team to kind of come to life against Carolina. And Davison, as to your point, as is a great add back into that 11, and that pushes Dorsey higher, who also provides a great service. The fact that you think this game is going to be won centrally,
Mhm.
why?
Because of what you just alluded to, right? So I think it's going to be the team who can actually break that initial line of pressure. We've seen both teams show different types of pressure situations. We've seen Dallas and Tampa Bay both show that they can high press very effectively. We've also seen that they can, in spurts, really sit in this mid to low block. Okay, so when that game ebbs and flows, it is often the responsibility and the recognition of the midfielders, particularly those eights, right? Those box to box midfielders and those holding midfielders, to recognize what's being presented to their back line and then showing up in the space around them. And to your point about Ubugagu, I think it's wonderful how just forward thinking she is. And because of that, I think Tampa Bay is going to very much key in on denying service to her. And so if I'm a midfielder, I'm recognizing that I'm going to have to be the first line that breaks that confrontation, that pressure. And then my immediate thought is to play on the half turn and then try to find turn isolation. So almost add a pass in your build so that you can shift for her to be opened up. And I do think like a Sid Nacello for Tampa Bay, I think the same can be true as what we just said about Ubugagu.
The record's pretty crazy here, Marion. They both have won one and they have tied twice. So they're so equal in terms of what their past performances against each other have looked like, which will make this even more fun on Saturday at the Saturday game at 7:30 Eastern time. You can catch it on Peacock. Next game up is Carolina hosting Fort Lauderdale Sunday at 7 o'clock Eastern time. Carolina, they're the Players Shield winners. They have the most goals with 45 this season. However, this loss to Dallas exposed some of their weaknesses on the back line. It was their first loss since March 15th. Carolina's opponents at times really find their chances in transition. Where do Carolina have to mitigate Fort Lauderdale's attack on Sunday?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, this is not a clear-cut game. On
No.
paper, it seems to be. But this is just what both teams have in terms of strength versus weakness. This is definitely not a clear-cut game. For Carolina, to answer your question, for Carolina, I think it's all about fatiguing Fort Lauderdale with the ball. I think if Carolina has this methodical possession, they really focus and key back in. I thought that was a place they really struggled against Dallas this past weekend. And if they really key back into having options close, right, building through every component of the thirds, they will inevitably fatigue Fort Lauderdale, which will ultimately help them mitigate Fort Lauderdale's transitional moments in the attack. So for Carolina, I think it's all about them having the ball.
This Fort Lauderdale team does have an electric attack. Allen, Gordon, Locklear with the starting three previously against Spokane last week. They allow Spokane a lot of shots, which Carolina is really clinical in that area. They have outshot all of their opponents this spring. And Fort Lauderdale has this youthfulness and almost this goldfish mentality that allows them to advance from game to game and really stay in a good spot. What is your biggest concern, though, for Fort Lauderdale this weekend?
My biggest concern is, can they create in the run of play? And there is no doubt still. You go back to the game they just played and look at the goal that was scored, right?
Mhm.
There is no doubt that when you look at Fort Lauderdale and you look at some of those kind of one-off moments, they have the most electric individual players in the Super League. I will absolutely die on that grave. Just players that can make things happen in a moment's notice, right? And so my concern is not, to your point, how effective they can be in transition, how effective they can be in those individual moments. My concern for them is when you're going to play against a Carolina team who is going to be stout defensively, they are going to congest the central spaces, right? They are going to be fine with you having the ball in front of them and just kind of shifting left to right. They will force, at least I would force Fort Lauderdale to try and play through these congested channels. Prove to Carolina, prove to everyone that they actually can build through the thirds and they're not just a transitional forward team. So if I'm Carolina, if I'm Philip Poole, I'm letting everything but these individual playmakers beat me. But I will
Right.
not give isolation space to players like Shania Gordon and let that be the deciding factor, because ultimately it was last weekend.
It'll be so fun to watch American Aguilera against Allen and Gordon in the wide areas. Watch for those 1v1 moments because it'll be fun this weekend on Sunday at 7 o'clock in Carolina. You can catch both of those games on Peacock. And the funny thing about the record here too, Marion, is they've both won two games against each other and they've both lost two games. So we don't even have an upper hand here when you look at previous experience against each other because it's all equal across the board. Locklear had a pretty cool goal celebration last week against Spokane. The backflip. Where does that rank on your terms of cool celebrations we've seen this season?
You know what? Honestly, like this might be a hot take. Every single time I see a player do something like that, I am like Stop. If you get hurt
I know.
celebrating, how many football players have we seen do these dumb celebrations? Not that hers was dumb, but we see them do these dumb celebrations, and then like a news report comes out 2 hours later. It's like so and so will not be available next week due to injury during celebration. So like immediately, like I saw her do that, and I was like, no.
You're such a
And then
mom
I was
for
like,
that, honestly.
I was like, we need you. Stop.
No more backflips. No more back. I would love to know though. Like she is shorter. I wonder if she was a gymnast in
Mm-mm.
a past life. Like
Wouldn't
she
surprise me.
seems like she'd be
Wouldn't
really good
surprise
at it.
me.
We'll have to have her on the show
As a
and
fellow
chat more
short
about that.
person, as a fellow short person, we were not all gymnasts, but I could see the thought. I also can't do a backflip.
Her technique looks really sound though, right? Like
Was,
it
it
doesn't look
was.
like somebody who learned on their backyard on their trampoline. But yeah, so
Great.
congratulations to Carolina, Fort Lauderdale, Dallas, and Tampa Bay. They will advance to the playoffs this weekend. We are not done here yet. We have Super League President Amanda Vandervort join the show to talk about the season as a whole, the excitement for the playoffs, and what we have to look forward to in 2.5 months when the next season kicks off. So stay with us. It's Game Week on Sirius XM.
Bringing you up to date on all the action from a busy weekend of women's soccer. This is USL Super League Game Week on Sirius XM FC.
Welcome back to Game Week on Sirius XM. We are joined by President Amanda Vandervort. Amanda, thank you so much for joining the show. Congratulations. You have made it to the playoffs. What an exciting regular season it was. Decision day had it all. So we're gonna continue this conversation with the playoffs because there's 3 games left to be played in the Super League. What excites you as a whole for the playoffs these next few weeks?
Oh, what a competitive stretch we have in these next 3 games, right? And I think it's an indication of how competitive this whole season was, top to bottom. Every team, every game was, it was a fight in every game, and the scores were close, lots of goals. So coming down to these last 4 teams and knowing kind of the history and background of the games that they've played against each other now coming into these semifinals, I think it makes for an exciting game. The players are really into it, the fans are into it, and I think it's going to be just dynamic matchups.
Yeah, me too. We actually talked about that earlier on the show, just how like some of these teams are just dogs. I mean, so they just know how to compete. And for the coaches and the staff, it's of all really across the league to be able to kind of have that buy-in in the inaugural season is absolutely wild. I'm sure for you, I'm going to ask this question knowing that the favorite season or the favorite moment is probably yet to come in the spring season, just as we are about to crown our first champion. But if you have to look back at the spring season and what it's been like, what is a favorite moment for you?
Mm. Favorite moment of the spring season. Gosh, you know what? It was with Anna when we were on the stage in Carolina to give out the player shield just a couple weeks ago. Because I remember, and I was telling Anna this, there was a moment so after the game, the team put out like a what do you call that? And it was like a
The
stage.
stage. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a stage. And you had to climb up the stairs onto the stage. And it was just Anna and I up there on the stage, and she had the microphone, and we were like kind of queuing up everyone to go. But Tim, the club chief operating officer, Tim Schultz, handed me the trophy. Like I had to like kind of bend down to get it and pick it up. And I remember being like, oh, it's a lot heavier than you realize when you're looking at it. And I held it, and it was kind of like slipping out of my fingers. And so I readjusted my hands underneath it and like kind of hoisted it up and looked up. And the fans, there were so many fans, there was like thousands of fans who had come to that side of the stadium looking, and they started cheering, for the trophy. And I think that was the first time we had revealed the player
Hmm.
shield. It was the
Hmm.
first time I had held it, and it was the first time standing there like marking a momentous occasion in the league, a finality of something
Yeah.
in this amazing first season. And so I had goosebumps, and I remember looking over at Anna and being like, "Wow, this is really cool. We get to share this moment together." And there's one picture, Anna, you sent it to me afterwards of the two of us on that stage. And if I'm
Yeah,
really honest, that was for me, that was a
yeah.
really, really special, touching moment, and I was honored to share it with you.
Could you
Yeah.
imagine if
Honor too.
Amanda had dropped the shield on the first ever
On
shield
Tim.
just dropped.
That's 100% something I would do, Marion. Like, no doubt.
Well, I also thought too, and Amanda, I was honored to be up there with you too. It was just like you said, it was cool to see everybody in the stands. And then it kind of came to my brain. There was a lot going on in Charlotte that day. Like there was another soccer game in town. The PGA tournament was in town. There was a big thing in NASCAR. And the fact that the Ascent had thousands of fans in attendance for what was a big game and just a regular season game where the team ended up winning the Shield just showed the advancements that the league and that in particular team has made in the Carolinas for all of those fans to still be there at like 10 o'clock at night and to support that group of girls. So what a cool moment. Also another cool moment off the field for you and the Super League in general is the signing of Gainbridge onto next season. Why was that the right partnership for you guys headed into your second ever year?
Yeah, you know what? It's funny, we're still talking, we can still talk about North Carolina because the day after that game was the NASCAR All-Star race in North Carolina. We actually had players come in, Sarah Clark from Spokane, we had Sydney Martinez from Brooklyn, we had Yuki from Tampa Bay Sun, and then Riley Parker from Carolina actually all went to the NASCAR All-Star game as guests of Gainbridge Inspired Motorsports. And I think that is a demonstration of one of the things we're so excited about with Gainbridge is that they're across so many sports and across so many properties, from the LPGA with their sponsorship of the Annika to the Billie Jean King Cup and tennis, and to basketball and the WNBA with Caitlin Clark, the Gainbridge Fieldhouse, which is where the WNBA All-Star is going to be this summer. So Gainbridge, for us, aligns so well from a sports marketplace perspective, and that I think you're going to see the Super League show up in a lot more places than you have before, and Gainbridge opens those doors for us. But the values that we share with Gainbridge and their focus on community is something that the USL holds really dear. So, being community driven, professional soccer, closer to home is, the USL's Super League's ethos. But now with the Gainbridge Super League coming to life in season 2, we can really deliver on that in a very tangible, meaningful way that you're going to see a lot of activation start to come to life over the next couple of months, and delivering on that promise.
I feel like when we came on the show, I think the announcement happened. Anna and I recorded the show the next day, and one of the things that stuck out to both of us, you've mentioned several things, also just some of the personnel involvement in Gainbridge. You think about Bryce Scurry, right, and what she's been able to bring to that platform. One of the most interesting parts of this whole partnership, for at least from a player's perspective for me, is that it doesn't always match, right? A league's intention doesn't always match what is best for the players. And Super League continues to drive forward with both of them equally. And for me, this partnership, as wonderful as it is for the league, is so much about the players. And I know that being player focused is something that you have been just so strong and so firm on leading us into the inaugural season of the Super League. And so I kind of want to dive deeper into that and just ask you, across the landscape, how do you envision the very unique thing that is Super League and the values that you just mentioned? How do you envision being able to continue charting the path for women's soccer in the U.S.?
Gosh, that's a big question, Marion.
You just give me the next. You can give me the next step if you want
Well,
to.
I think the way we think about the Super League is, top level elite professional women's soccer. And we want to create the environment where women can, bring their whole selves to the environment and to compete and be the best athlete, the best soccer player that they're capable of being or want to be. And when we think about the USL more holistically in the women's kind of landscape, we're thinking about the development of the players into that top tier as well. So that includes our academy system, which is unique in the US landscape, to allow players pre-college to actually get pro experience is really what our academy system is built for. And we've now seen players go from the academy, from Taylor Smith in Fort Lauderdale to B. Hilton in Carolina, players that started in our academy system have decided that the pro route is the right route for them, and they've now signed professional contracts. For us, that's an indicator of the success of the pathway and, watching it in action. We also have the W League, which is our kind of summer pre-professional league, and 25% of the players in the Super League competed in the W League prior to coming in. So again, another demonstration of that pathway and truly preparing players to be pros. But it's not just players, although certainly I want to talk about players as much as we can. But when we're talking about development and the growth of the game, we have to talk about coaches, administrators, kind of the whole infrastructure that exists, and thinking how we develop women for the future to drive the future of the game, and also the women's game holistically, everyone in it. So we've launched a pre-pro residency program at the USL, where we bring in aspiring coaches into the preseason environment in our pro clubs and give them the chance to actually coach at the pro level, work with the front office staff, work with the coaching and technical staff to understand what it is to be a coach in the pro game. So then they can also make the decision, do I go pro? Do I stay in youth? Do I stay in college? Like, what's the right environment for them? Because there's so many people that just have not experienced the pro game before. And my hope is that the more people we can get into the pro game to either have those touch points in the PPR, pre-pro residency program, or players that can experience the game at this level and then, recruit others into the league, or talk about their experience. I think the more the league will, grow, but importantly, impact the rest of the country and the rest of the development in the United States, so that we can retain our place as the best women's national team in the world. And I think that's an important role that we play as the Super League and the USL in driving that.
And the coaches play a massive impact on the players. And the fact that you have an opportunity for coaches to come in and figure out, is the professional level right for me before I even get to that level and I'm in that place, coaching and recruiting those types of players is huge. One last thing to put a bow on this Gainbridge thing. I was watching the NBA playoffs, the Pacers playing the Knicks. And the Pacers play at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, I think it's Fieldhouse.
That's right.
So every time I saw it on the floor, I was like, USL Super League or Gainbridge Super League in a few months. So just that name recognition for me, seeing that on the floor was like, wow, this is a huge opportunity for the Super League, for NBA fans watching this NBA playoffs. Okay, just to continue on a conversation about the players, because you've made it very clear, as Marion was saying, that player focus is really important for you. What have you really consciously done this season to make that a priority?
Yeah, we spend a lot of time listening to the players. I mean, it sounds so simple, but it's so important just to listen, I think. And listen, there's going to be things that we need to adjust from year one. We're a startup league, and we've learned a lot this year. And I think taken a lot of learnings from the players about how to continue to grow to the league to make it one of the best in the world. So very, very tangibly, I spend a lot of time listening and learning, watching what they're posting on Instagram, understanding how I watch all their videos when they do local news, when they're, doing stuff for clubs, really just taking it in and taking notes and understanding what it is that's important to them. What are the things they value in their experience, so that we can elevate those things and make it the best, like I said, elite environment where they can be their best.
I want to go back to what you said and kind of wrap it into the question of, one of the things, again, just thinking about putting myself in this situation and say, how would I react if I was a player? Because I believe that you and I exchanged a text months ago, maybe even in the fall season, where I was like, this is what I needed, right? Like, this is, and I mean that in the way, for people that don't understand, when you are going and making that jump from, youth to college, then college to professional, right? And then professional to the real world, after post-professional, all of those universes are very different. They all exist completely on their own. And it's really hard as an individual to kind of mesh all of those worlds together. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, as you were alluding to, that USL as an ecosystem has done is provided that vision and that linkage where I can see the youth, I can see the college, or because a lot of our, make no mistake about it, a ton of our USL coaches have incredible college connections if that's the route you go. But you can make those connections, and then to your point, I can even now as a professional at an elite league, D1 American women's soccer, I can actually start realizing, all right, this is not going to last me forever. I love this game. What even are my options? And you can actually kind of start picturing your future. And so I just wanted to lay that out for everyone to kind of realize like what Amanda was talking about with this whole pathway. And now I'm going to transition. That was a long-winded kind of lead in to that aside, because to me, that's one of the things that USL as a whole should be the most proud of all the time. That aside, if you had to pick something in this inaugural season that you are the most proud of, what would it be?
The most proud of, aside from the players, because I'm honestly most proud of the players because I feel like um, coming into a new league with 8 startup teams and a brand new league, I feel like the players stepped into their own and made this
Yeah,
league their own. And I used to tell
they
them that
did.
too, like, I was the spokesperson for this thing for so long, for years
Mhm.
before we started. I've been here 4 years now building this league. And I went to all the preseason camps. I went to every club to preseason and met with the players and talked to them. And I was like, this league is what you make it, right? Like I've been a spokesperson, but like it's on you guys now. How you talk about the league, how you present the league,
Accountability.
how
Yeah.
you show up every day, whether
Mhm.
it's in training, whether it's in matches, how you celebrate games. I mean, you guys remember Brooklyn's celebrations from the first half were like off the hook. And but that became the league and what the
Mhm.
players bring to it is what it is. And so as much as we can create policy and governance and create structure and a schedule, at the end of the day, like how the people in it show up and what they make it
Mm.
is the product, is the league itself. So I'm proud of the league, I'm proud of the product it's become, but that's because of the people that are in it. And that's you guys too. That's the broadcasters, that's the podcasters, that's the writers, the journalists. It's the way that the league comes to life is from the people who are invested and involved in it.
Well
Yes.
said.
And sometimes, obviously, you go out to get soccer players because you want obviously fantastic soccer players. But the fact that these teams have also done the right thing and the right girls, we've had a lot of girls on this show this season, and every single one of them is just a great personality and someone you would want to be on your team, rather that's on the field, off the field, in this type of situation. So, credit to all of these teams on how they have really done a great job of recruiting great girls that have made this such a fun experience. We got 2.5 months, Amanda, until the next season kicks
That's
off, which is
crazy.
so crazy to think about. But there's definitely a lot that you are doing in the USL office to get ready for that. What's a priority in 2025, 2026 that you weren't able to make a priority because you had to get soccer going in the first year?
Yeah, we had to get 22 players a ball and 4 refs at 115 games or
You
whatever.
did it.
So
You did it.
yeah, well, I think the big thing on the horizon for us right now is the switch over to the Gainbridge Super League. I do think there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just a title on a league. It really is change. I mean, it is, right? It's changing all
Yeah.
the logos, changing all
Yeah.
the creative. Like there's a lot of like just kind of structural work that goes
Yeah.
into that, but bringing to life the initiatives that Gainbridge and the Gainbridge Super League we're working on together, I think are going to be really exciting. I think one example we can start to talk about is it used to be called Parity Week, but they've renamed to Gainbridge Assists, which is the month of November, and they do a lot of work on equity for women in sports or women in communities, and so you're going to see us bring a lot of that to life and work hand in hand with Gainbridge alongside their ambassadors from Caitlin Clark, Billie Jean King, Brianna Scurry, Annika Sorenstam, all of their like ambassadors to bring this women's sports and equity to life through through the platform that we have. And to me, that's something that's really important to who and what we are is delivering on that promise. So there's a lot that's going to go into that. That's top of mind for me right now because we're going to make all the switch over in the next, in the next couple of months. And we've been building out all of our plans and our budgets for the year ahead. So, yeah. And it's to your point, it's a short turnover between now and next season. Of course, on the team side and the player side, they're actively, we're going to have a couple more Jacksonville players announced today, I think, today or tomorrow. So they're building out their roster. You're seeing contract decisions being made, teams being built for next season because those players show up into camp in early July.
Yep.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how these teams come together in year two. What have they learned from year one? How do you build your roster now going into the second year to be competitive, but ultimately to win a league? And I think that's one of the things we've seen from Carolina, from Tampa, Dallas, Fort Lauderdale, the teams that were consistent through the whole year. There were dips along the way for every single one of them, but overall they were consistent through the whole season. So I'm curious if the coaches that are in the league, sporting directors, et cetera, thinking about the 25-26 season are thinking through how to manage consistency through the 25-26 season.
Yeah, Anna and I talk about that a lot, just how I think one of the most exciting things for me next season is gonna be seeing the lessons, the very obvious lessons learned from some coaches, what worked, what didn't. And then obviously you're introducing a team like Sporting Jacks, who, by the way, the player signings that they've already announced, like big time, okay, right? So like they're gonna be there to compete. It's gonna be a really interesting kind of coaches dynamic, I think, next year that maybe we didn't really see that much this season. But I'm not going to let you get out of here without what's top of my mind, which is the fit that you probably already have planned for the final. Everyone, Amanda's going to be very, very busy. She's going to be at all the playoff games, lots of travel, so outfits have to be packable, right? We have to be able to work them. Also, she drums in the supporter section. She's very active, hopping up around. So we also have to have some comfort. Okay, so it's a very delicate balance. Do you have your outfit picked out already?
I remember the first time I did the drumming in Tampa Bay with the Heat Wave, the supporters group there. I had this necklace on that had I had these. I think it was Tampa Bay versus DC because I've got these little lightning bolt earrings that I wear when I go to DC games. And I had this necklace that had a sun, like this spiky sun thing. And I remember I was holding the drumsticks and I went to bang and the sun stuck into the side of my hand. And it got stuck. I pulled it out and I had to run inside to the medical room because I self-injured doing the drums with my necklace. So to your point, Marion, yes, comfort is a big piece. It's not just style. You got to be prepared. Self-injure during drum solos. But yeah, I certainly have to be able to bang the drums and still look good handing out a trophy. Right. So it's no small task. Also, you got to have the right shoes for the turf or the grass or whatever it is. So heels, we'll have to figure out what makes it to the bottom of my feet. But I appreciate the question because I think it's important that
It is.
You always look good. You always. Anna and I talk about it all the time.
Yeah, you always look so sharp. Is there one or two stores that you really lean on typically to find a good fit? I need to know, where are we going for these? A lot of the suits too, you're matching sets.
I do have a favorite shop, actually, Alice and Olivia. I love Alice and Olivia's suits. I love the way they fit me. I also like Veronica Beard. The suit seemed to fit me for some reason.
I thought you were going to say that. Yeah, that's a good one too. You can't go wrong in either store. Well, Amanda, thank you so much for coming on. So fun to hear about what the plans are for next season, and congratulations on everything that you've accomplished in this hectic but so fun 24-25 season. We can't wait to see you at all the playoffs and at the final, and I'm sure we'll chat with you in a few months before we kick off the next season.
Thank you, guys.
You've been listening to USL Super League Game Week on SiriusXM FC.